Hey everyone, this is Mario again, coming at you with another movie review, and as you can tell from the title, this is a double feature. I decided that since these two films are connected, I decided that I'd do them both in one review. I'm going to be reviewing today the 2004 film, that I actually saw this film in the theaters, by the way, Alien vs. Predator, directed by Paul Wild Stallions Anderson, and its sequel directed by the brothers Strauss, Alien vs. Predator Requiem. And yes, this is the unrated cut. This isn't the unrated cut of this movie. It's the DVD that has a slightly extended version, which I prefer the extended version of the film, by the way, because I like that opening better. Anyway, of course, the genesis of this film started way back in the early 90s, late 80s. I don't remember exactly which came first, but it was around the time that Predator 2 came out, because Predator 2 has that little cameo of an alien skull at the end of the movie, and then around that same time they started the Alien vs. Predator comic books, and they sold well, and they even did a line of action figures, which I did collect a lot of the action figures as a kid, and a lot of them have disappeared, but I still do have 2 of them. I know the other one's up here somewhere. There it is. That's right, there's action figures on top of my shelf. Sue me. Of course, they're open, of course, because I played with them as a kid. Here we have the crab alien. And of course we got the classic Predator. By the way, I did actually have the invisible version of this. You know that you had to send in the box tops to get. I don't know what happened to it. This came in a dual pack with the classic Warrior Alien, which is pretty cool. I used to play AVP with them a lot as a kid. Of course, the only movie that I'd actually seen by that point to go off of were Alien 3 and Predator 2. So, classic film and a film that gets a lot of hate. So, it was years afterwards that I was introduced to the other films. But as you can tell, that Alien vs. Predator, I was a fan of the crossover for years. And then when I heard that the film was being made, I looked into it. Like, I watched some of the behind-the-scenes stuff online. I had to watch it at school, though, but I only did it after I was done with my work. I mean, we were allowed to look online, and it was on a site that wasn't banned, so I looked it up. And I saw the interview with Paul Wild Stallions Anderson where he was talking about the genesis of it. He didn't really go into the plot that much other than the fact that the Alien vs. Predator beat the crap out of each other. But, so I was introduced to it, and I was also, through this, introduced to the book Chariots of the God, which is a book that is highly ridiculed in the scientific community. I mean, before I dropped it because of the workload, the archaeology class I was in, one of the first things when he was talking about pseudoscience was that, which I could see why archaeologists and other scientists would hate Eric von Daniken's theory and Chariots of the Gods. I mean, there's not really much evidence, it's mostly speculation, and I would say it is possible, there's no evidence, but if you think about it, I say aliens exist, I believe they do. You can't tell me that they did not probably in the past come here and maybe had a minor influence. They probably didn't do it to the extent that some people believe, you know, helping them build the pyramids. I don't think that they helped them with that. Maybe like give them I think at most with that they might have, you know, maybe you should build like a giant structure to honor your king or something. Something like that. And maybe there was interbreeding, we'll never know unless we actually find evidence, but you never know. But the whole Von Daniken theory being put into the plot, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's actually interesting. Of course, it makes me wonder how that would connect with the Predators and the whole thing, because how the Predators act in the first 2 movies doesn't give that any inclination for that. But maybe it's a different clan. Maybe it's a version of the clan that doesn't... Maybe it's a clan of Predators that didn't hunt humans, or maybe... Since maybe it was just those specific humans they didn't hunt, and after years when they saw that they were no longer worshipped, they're like, they're fair game. Never know, it'd be interesting. They didn't go delve into that, but anyway, then of course I went and saw the movie, and I am probably the only one in our group of friends that does not really hate this movie. I have problems with the movie that are mostly seen after years of seeing the other films and then watching it more as an adult, but I don't have a problem with the movie. In fact, when I saw it in the theaters, I didn't really hear any overt booing. If there was any booing, there was no booing. I mean, there wasn't any like, hey, that's the best movie ever. But there wasn't any booing. I mean, if people complained about the movie, I didn't hear them when I left the theater. I mean, we had a good time in the theater. But the movie does have problems which I will address. Probably the biggest problem that this movie has is the fact that it was released as a PG-13. I mean, I haven't seen the unrated cut, but from what I understand, it's mostly just some of the deleted scenes put back into the movie, and those deleted scenes are on here, so I can tell you it's not really that much to put in. They should have shot this. How Wild Stallion shot this should have been more like how this one was shot, with the gore and stuff. I mean, the only blood we're really seeing in this movie is like a few sprays of blood and then alien blood. Other than that, it's not really that gory. Anyway, the plot of the movie is that every 100 years the Predators come to Earth to hunt aliens, and of course we all know aliens are made facehugger brand. And of course it's Earth, so they're made via humans, which just connects to the Von Daniken thing that the Predators had this agreement with the humans that they would teach them how to build. In exchange, every 100 years they would expect a sacrifice in order to bring forth the aliens to hunt. And of course, if a Predator was successful in hunting an alien, they would be able to put a mark on them, you know, a hunting mark. And if they weren't, we all know what happens. And of course, the movie begins as the next 100 years is happening, and it's happening on an island called Boyatoya. Excuse me, I always have trouble pronouncing this word. Bovatoya Island, which is an island 1,000 miles north of Antarctica. So it's basically out in the middle of nowhere, in the Arctic. No one can hear you scream. But it's not like it's obviously different than the thing is, of course, because it's, you know, in a pyramid underground. An expedition is being sent, and the expedition is being funded by none other than the Weyland Corporation. This is before Weyland-Yutani. And the person in charge of Weyland Corporation is Charles Bishop Weyland, played by Lance Henriksen. So this, I guess, kind of sets up a little bit about the Bishop android, and it also confirms that Bishop 2 from Alien 3 is probably an android, either that, or it's the descendant of Charles Bishop Weyland. And of course, we're probably going to see Charles Bishop Weyland's son or grandson in Prometheus, because I don't remember what year that movie's supposed to take place in, but that's another review for another day. He hires a group, and the group is being led by Alexa Woods, who's played by Sana Lathan, who, if I remember correctly, she was in Blade. I think if I remember correctly, she played Blade's mother. I'm checking her filmography. Yeah, that was actually her first role, according to her filmography. Hey, that's interesting. She was in an adaptation of A Raisin in the Sun. It was a TV film. I gotta give that a watch. I want to see what character she played. Oh, yeah, that's interesting, actually. She played the wife character. That's good. That should be interesting. Probably won't be as good as the original one, but these are basically her two big roles. Blade and this movie are her two big roles, and Contagion, I guess, a little bit. But Blade, she did better, because then again, maybe because she had a minor role, but here she just seems like she's a poor woman's Ripley. That's all I could define her as, and I can't really blame the actress. It's more the writing, which the screenplay was actually done by Paul Anderson and Shane Salerno, which both of them, I don't know how many drafts of the screenplay went through, but I know that this was the idea Fox wanted to do when before, according to the thing, they had like ideas like one closer to the comics or something. They should have like tweaked the screenplay a little bit more to make it a little bit more gory and make the dialogue better, because that's one of the main other problems with the dialogue. Some parts it's good, some parts it's not. I mean, it goes back and forth. But if you think about it, it does kind of have that B-movie vibe to it, which is, I guess, why I can watch it and not like go, really? Steal from the Mist, really? But it's nothing that you'll see. You're not going to see the Predator. It's not dialogue like you're going to see the Predator break down and start clicking in the Predator language. Ulrich, I knew him, Horatio. That actually would be funny to see, though. Yeah. Yeah, the Predator version of Hamlet. You get to see a Predator version of I got a good one. A Predator version of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Hamlet. Now that'd be cool. You killed my father. Big mistake. Rip the head off. Fatality. that'd be cool. Oh man, if I remember correctly, we see something like that in Predators though, but different review. Anyway, the group makes it down into the eventually finds where this heat source is coming from on the island, and that's where they find the pyramid. And from there they find the predators when they show up, and of course they also find aliens, and of course, as you can guess, some people will die in order for the aliens to come out. And from there we get aliens fighting predators a couple times, and of course we learn the backstory about the pyramids, and then the humans have to decide whether or not they're just going to run or they're going to try to side with the predators. As they say, we're in the middle of a war, and that's how it goes. Now, I will say the effects in this movie are one of its saving graces. I mean, because it's mostly practical. I mean, there are parts where it's CGI, but it's parts where it's been cheaper and easier to do, like when the Alien Queen is moving. I mean, they could have filmed it like how they did in Aliens, but Paul Waltz Anderson is not as good with the camera as Jimmy Cammey was. And I will say Jimmy is still kind of good with the camera, but he just needs better work. So he probably couldn't have filmed it. But you could tell from the first Alien vs. Predator fight alone that Paul Anderson is a fan of both series, which I guess you could say this is kind of like a fan fiction movie at times because of that. But not as bad as the Resident Evil movies got. That is way worse than this. I could tell you, I would rather watch this movie over the last Resident Evil movie. And the fact that this is in my collection, is still in my collection. I mean, I would have still bought this movie if it was made last year. That's telling you, this movie I hold in higher regard than that last Resident Evil movie. I mean, I hold in higher regard than the third Resident Evil movie, and I hold it a little bit in a little bit more high regard than the second Resident Evil movie. The first Resident Evil movie I think is the best out of all the live-action ones, but that's another review. But since they're connected to Walt Anderson, I decided to bring them up. But it's sort of a fan fiction, but you could tell he's a fan of the franchise. And that, to tell you the truth, the first Alien vs. Predator fight and the second one near the end are the two best scenes in the movie. To tell you the truth. I mean, if the movie had been made a little bit more action-packed, like how the comics were, then the movie would have been a bigger hit. And that's also part of the problem with this movie, but I'll get to that in a little bit. I like the fact that there's a lot of practical effects, but one of the big problems with it is that we have 3 predators in the movie, and 2 of them get killed off very quickly. I'm not going to give spoilers how, but the first one goes out like a pussy. The second one, he fights for a while, and he gets killed stupidly when he had enough time. I mean, the Team 4-Star Piccolo would probably look at his corpse and go, "Why didn't you dodge?" Oh, there go more organs. Now, a Scar, the final predator that's based off of this bad boy, at least in design-wise, he's the badass of the movie. The only problem is, though, that some people have is when he's unmasked how his face looks, but I don't have a problem with it. And partially it's because this is a young predator. The slightly young almost cartoonish look to his face. If you compare it to even Wolf in the next movie, and even, of course, the Predators, and all the Predators in the other movies, he does kind of have a slight cartoonish look. But it doesn't bother me. He's a young Predator. This is his first hunt, so I prefer the designs from the past movies and the next movies, but it doesn't bug me. And of course, the Alien Queen. The only times that I have a problem with her is when it's fully CGI, because it, as my buddy Effrey has said a couple times, looks kind of like the T-Rex the way she moves, but when it's actually the practical effect, I don't have a problem with it, and how they defeat it, I don't have a problem with it. But the movie has problems. It's mostly from the fact that the writing is kind of bad. The story idea could have been better. I don't have a problem with the Predators interfering in the past with humanity. It would have been better if it had just been them all hunting, but I can see probably why they would make the deal with him. But I feel that maybe it was just with certain tribes that they made the deal with, you know, you give us people to hunt these, to make these things, we won't hunt you, and we won't skin your asses. Anyway, my rating for Alien vs. Predator, the first one, for the enjoyment I can get out of it, I say 3 out of 3. 3 out of 3, that's a perfect score. 3 out of 5, excuse me. Now we come to the 2007 follow-up directed by the brother Strauss, which I have to say, I know my buddies hold this film in higher regard, but honestly I have to say, because of the various problems it has, it's probably even with it, so it, like as you can guess, it's going to get the same rating from maybe 3 out of 5, but it does have some advantages the other one doesn't, but I don't find myself watching it as much, or at least then, because I've only watched this movie twice all the way through because I've had it, because it's not a film I could pop in all the time. Now, of course, the plot of this is it takes place right after the ending of this one. The spaceship that we saw at the end of that movie crashed because of the Predalien. That, of course, that's spoiler for the first movie, but I got to talk about it to address this movie. And of course, as it crashed, they managed to send out a distress signal, and the Predator Wolf, as he's called because he's by himself, gets it and heads to Earth to take care of problems. He arrives to find a town in Colorado called Gunnison is being overrun by aliens. And of course, to make matters worse, the Predalien, as hints throughout the movie give, is a queen. So you could tell they're fucked. It would have been bad enough if it was just an alien, and then of course some facehuggers that were on board the ship to get off, and then there was a bunch of aliens, but they have a queen with them. And it's a Predalien. And aliens, their strength is determined by what they gestate in, and a predator is stronger than a human. A normal alien is bad enough. As alien gestate inside a human is bad enough. What inside a predator? Oh boy, you can tell things are going to be bad. Especially, and I don't know the fact that it's a queen. Bad day. I mean, Hudson, you said game over. No, no. Yeah, Hudson. Hudson, you said game over in Aliens. You'd be saying it even more now. Game over, man. Game over. You might have just shot yourself, but anyway, anyway, like the first AVP movie, most of our characters are kind of forgettable. I mean, we got an ex-convict character, we got a sheriff played by a guy who not really a good actor. We got we got the ex-convict's brother, who was kind of a juvenile delinquent, and his soon-to-be girlfriend. Then we got then we got the punk bullies from the high school and stuff. So they're basically just stock characters we've seen in 1,000 town movies, only they're in an AVP movie, which is what sets them apart. They're probably the least memorable character. That's one thing. Out of the entire franchise, the characters in these movies, at least the human ones, these ones are less memorable. I mean, this one actually, for me at least, had some memorable characters. I mean, the guy who takes pictures, he's sort of he's an average character. And of course, it's funny when he kills one facehugger. Charles Bishop Whalen, he's a nice character, and it's Lance Hendrickson. The Italian guy, he's a good guy. Other than that, the human characters aren't really that memorable. Here, none of the human characters are memorable, at least the ones that are in town, because we got the military guy. One of them is supposed to be the guy that worked with Agent Keyes in Predator 2. Then, of course, the cameo at the end by Miss Yutani, connecting Wayland and Yutani. That was interesting. And, but other than that, the human characters aren't that memorable. The star of the movie is basically Wolf. He's what steals the show in the movie, and that's one of the advantages this movie has, because it only has one predator, so it doesn't succumb to the syndrome this movie has by having to kill off one predator in a stupid way, and then another one go out in a dumb moment where it forgets something, leaving the last predator to kick butt. Since it's one predator from the beginning, or at least one main predator, because from the beginning, he gets to kick butt a lot through the movie. And he does kick butt. I mean, this actually, I have to say that Wolf is my second favorite Predator out of the entire series. That's right, I like him a little bit more than the Predator from the first movie, and that, I know somebody's going to say, what? It's true, I like the Predator in the first movie, but there's just something about Wolf that makes him a little bit more badass. The undisputed king of the Predators in the movies has to go to the Predator in the second movie, without a doubt. He's the most badass one. As Aaron did in that one tribute, he's the king of kings out of all the Predators. But Wolf is number 2, because he got some cool weapons, like he still got his spear, and of course the 2 cannons that he has on his shoulder, and then he combines them into like the Predator mini shotgun, which was cool. Then of course he got the Predator whip that's made out of a xenomorph tail, that is cool. And of course, because of him, we get to see the first glimpse of the Predator homeworld, which is cool. But the thing about Wolf is they never state what he is or not. There's 2 possibilities. Either he's a predator, that his job is basically to go clean up messes for one reason. Either he was disgraced by killing an unarmed person accidentally, or he grew tired of going into hunt, and for some reason that's why they made him that. And the second reason is kind of connected to that. Maybe he's a hunter that hasn't gone hunting in a while, because he hasn't had a challenge. When he finds out that a Predalien is responsible for this mess on Earth, he decides, I'm going to go in. It's a challenge, and he does get a challenge in the end, because you can tell that the final battle in the movie is going to be Wolf versus the Predalien, and it's a pretty good fight, too. Doesn't have a definitive conclusion because of what happens at the very end of the movie, but it's a pretty good fight. And of course, I don't mind the lighting there, which one of the complaints when this movie first came out was the lighting, which it was fixed on the DVD. And I will admit, the lighting in a couple of the scenes is bad. Could have been fixed, but I mean, it's supposed to be in a dark place in the sewer, but the lighting in Aliens in a place that was supposed to be dark was better than that. I mean, they could have filmed it better, but it's the Brother Strauss' first movie, if I remember correctly, so kind of forgivable, I mean. And also, they're probably not as good, not as good as visionaries as Jimmy was back in the 80s. The Predator and Alien effects are still as good as the first one, maybe even a little bit better because of the gore factor in it. Because this movie does have gore, it has blood, but sometimes it's kind of hard to tell because of, you know, the lighting. The lighting and the acting and the human characters and a little bit of the writing is my only problems with it. But what redeems the movie is the Alien versus Predator fights, and that's the main reason. But one thing this movie has over the other movie is that the music is better. And also, I do like that we get to see the National Guard go up against the aliens, which you could tell right away they're not going to fare well. I mean, colonial marines in the future with pulse rifles that shoot armor-piercing rounds, who have infrared scopes, and are led by a guy played by a former, I don't forget what branch he was, but a guy who was in Vietnam could not defeat the alien. You think the National Guard weekend warriors are going to do it? I know, I'm not bad-mouthing the military, it's just that, think about it. Guys who do military stuff all the time for a living, guys who only do it on the weekends, who's going to win? Yeah. And also the fact that technology, there's a big gap in between that, so you can tell that they're not going to fare well, and they actually go out quicker than the Colonial Marines do. But then again, the Colonial Marines are the main characters in Alien, whereas these guys are just basically cannon fodder. I mean, the only military person that even does something is one of our main characters, which she's one of the few memorable ones in the movie. But like in the first movie, she's basically like a poor man's Ripley. The only difference is, one, her actress probably had no qualms about picking up a gun. Two, unlike the Ripley character, she actually was trained to use the weapons professionally. So that's the one advantage she has over Ripley. Which, of course, which is why she just kind of take charge with the survivors at one point. Anyway, I don't know what else to talk about the movie without giving away any more plot points. I mean, it's still a fun time waster, and both movies are guilty pleasures for me. Like I said, both films have problems. This one, the lighting. Both of them, the writing. And connected to that, the main characters. They should have put more time into it. And like I said, the rating for this, 3 out of 5. What do I want in the future if they make any more AVP films? Well, for one, if they make any more AVP films, I want them set in the future. I mean, they have AVP games set in the future. I mean, like that AVP one that was made, that came out a couple years ago that I got down there that I want to do a blind walkthrough of one day. That one's set in the future right after Alien 3, and it's pretty good from what I've seen of the videos. Some of the plot points I've read of it. Why can't we do one in the future? Just like maybe now that would be a prequel to the Alien films I would like to see. Like, you can still do it. Like, make it after Prometheus. Like, have it take place in between. No, how about this? How about it take place in between? How about an AVP film that takes place in between Aliens and Alien? Like, maybe somewhere else. That would be interesting, or maybe one that takes place at the same time as Colonial Marines, or a little bit after Colonial Marines, or maybe have it take place between Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, in between the 200 years, and that's the reason. And when the aliens get destroyed, explains why the United Military thing, or as I suspect in that thing, maybe Weyland-Yutani is lying to Ripley, but maybe that explains why they have to clone Ripley in the first place. I would find that interesting. I would rather them not do one after Alien Resurrection, because then they'd have to bring in the Ripley character again, and I would rather not have Ripley 8 be in it. I mean, how she went out in the AVPT comic, now that was interesting. But one of those time period setting one would be interesting. But of course, to do it in certain places, you'd have to either do an adaptation of one of the stories, or yeah, that'd be interesting. Do a movie adaptation of the 2010 video game. Now that would be very interesting. Or do a sequel, because depending on which version of event is canon, it'd be interesting. But if they do another movie, definitely do it in the future. And also, it'd have to be gory. It'd have to be at least a medium to hard R, because that would be one way to do it. Get a director that can shoot action without doing a bunch of shaky cam. I just thought something would be cool. Imagine Stallone directing a AVP movie. You know, it'd be bloody as hell, but of course I don't know if he'd do it, because it'd be for Fox, and I don't know if he'd do an action movie for anyone other than Lionsgate and them not interfere with them. Then again, I think Stallone, they'd probably leave him alone. It's like, he'd probably be like, no, you hired me to direct this movie. You guys are gonna interfere with me? Hey, you, come here. You gonna interfere with me again, or you wanna go in the ring? Ow! Ow! Okay, Sly, you can direct the movie. Yeah, you know, maybe I'll fight Apollo, or, you know, what do you think? Adrian! I couldn't resist, guy. And then, of course, behind him, when the guys complain, that's right. I'm gonna ask you, now CEO, I'm gonna ask you a bunch of questions. I don't want them answered. Okay, Arnold, what are you doing? Who is your daddy, and what does he do? You made that movie over 20 years ago. I know, I still like to say my dialogue randomly. Do not question me! I know, I know, I got nothing else to talk about now. Anyway, it'd have to be gory, it'd have to have a competent action director. It'd have to have practical effects, because if it was not too much CGI, just like minimal CGI at best, it'd have to have characters that are at least semi-memorable, depending on if you're going with the Marine scenario or something. I would say only 1 or 2 Predators. Try to keep it to maybe only 1. Or if you have multiple ones, like have them do minor roles, and then just like have one main Predator going into hunt. And then maybe, this is what I would try to do, have a variety of aliens. Like maybe have a couple runners, maybe have some of the, like the giant praying mantis alien I used to have as a toy. That'd be interesting. Maybe you could do another Predalien. That would be interesting. I mean, hey, maybe that's one way you kill off if you have multiple aliens. Have them die that way, because then at least their death would serve a plot purpose, other than trying to get rid of the aliens so there's only one left. Maybe have some Praetorians, which is basically supposed to be the middle ground, a queen in the early stages of development, or the guards for the queen. Which, that's what I think the Predalien is supposed to be, a queen that's in the early advanced stages, but it'd be interesting to do that. Either set it in a space station in space, or like on an alien planet, like how the original comic is. And also, if you're going to team up an alien and a human, make the human seem badass. Don't make him like, oh no, I got a spear. No, sorry. Oh no, where's Blade? Yeah, Blade versus aliens. Now that would be cool. You bleeding acid, motherfucker. I'll shake you. I did in prison, I'll shake you.